This is the Cover 3 Tailgate. And welcome back to the Cover 3 podcast here on CBS Sports. That's Tom Fornelli. That's Bud Elliott. That's Danny Kanell. I'm Chip Patterson coming to you live at youtube.com/cover3 and everywhere you get your podcast on demand. Thanks for hanging out. Smash that subscribe. Smash that like and come and join us in the chat, a.k.a. the Cover 3 Tailgate, where about an hour and a half before we got going, the parking lot was open and our friend Jim pulled right up into his spot. Got the conversation going. Jim says, question for Tom. Would you rather see Duran or Watkins start for Villa? And a question for the whole crew. Any plays on the 68 Ventures Bowl tonight?
Well, considering Jean Duran got a red card for stepping on a dude twice in the first half, I would have much preferred to see Ollie Watkins start today. That's for sure.
And then for the 68 Ventures Bowl, which is between Arkansas State and Bowling Green, 9 p.m. kickoff here on the 26th of December. Who's got a lock?
Give me Bowling Green first quarter.
Oh, anything to get to bed?
Just to be done with it.
Just to be done with it? Yeah. Any reads there on that one?
I got nothing.
Like, is Fannin playing?
So I have come around. There was a while where fading the MAC was a principal play in bowl games, but they've kind of flipped it. And I don't know if that's a lack of transfer portal activity, or I don't know if it has to do with just sort of the makeup of these MAC teams, but trying to stay on the fade the MAC train. I know last bowl season and maybe even the bowl season before was not as much of a lock as it used to be. Take that for what it's worth. I mean, fading the MAC here would be putting all of your trust in Butch Jones and Arkansas State in a game that kicks off at 9 p.m. Eastern time. So, that would, I don't know. Good luck out there. Bowling Green first.
You could also do like just a MAC parlay
for today.
For today, and I think they've got 4 games over the next couple days. So just money lines across the MAC. It's got to be like plus 40 something.
You go grab Miami, Ohio against Colorado State from Saturday. You go grab. Yeah. Okay. There we go.
Do it. You're going to be rich. Thank me later.
For it. All right. Lots to get to today. Of course, as you see in the headline, the primary goal is we're going to be taking you inside the matchup, big game breakdown style, as we look at the quarterfinal matchups: Penn State, Boise State, Texas, Arizona State, Oregon, Ohio State, and Georgia, Notre Dame. In addition to the 68 Ventures Bowl, a look ahead to some of what we have seen in terms of recent activity, what we have seen and what we will see in terms of the matchup. But first, a quick spin through what we've seen with some of the latest portal activity. So let's jump into the portal. Fernando Mendoza to Indiana. Now, Danny, kind of interesting because I know that Fernando Mendoza took some visits to some big name programs, some other playoff contenders, some other teams that are still in the playoffs right now. What does that say about either Mendoza, or what does that say about Indiana to you as we look at the Hoosiers lining up their quarterback for 2025?
I think he's definitely a quarterback who was a hotter commodity. He's played pretty well. He's done a nice job at Cal. I know some of the other schools that are involved. I think clearly, we've talked about this a lot, about Indiana's willingness. I was kind of surprised by it, but, Tom was kind of on it early, saying they're spending money to try to make this football team relevant. So clearly here they are with a case to make, spending money to get one of the better quarterbacks out there. It also helps his brother, another quarterback on the roster. Maybe he wants to play with his brother. Maybe there's some of that aspect going on too. His brother's a younger quarterback, so we could play with him a year before, he's off. And, maybe that has something to do with it. But overall, I think this is more of a sign of like Kirk Cignetti, the reason they extended him, the reason why we've all believed like, hey, this isn't an anomaly. This is more Indiana's kind of here to stay. And overall, I think it's great for the game too, if Indiana is willing to pay and is going to be a contender in the Big Ten.
Yeah, it's a good signing for him based on what's in the portal. And it's like, I do think there is some skewing the portal because there aren't really any incredible quarterbacks. Like there's no Cam Ward in the portal this year, at least not yet. But of the guys that are available, I don't think Mendoza is as good as Curtis Rourke. I don't think he's as accomplished as Curtis Rourke was when Indiana went and got him, but I think he can be. I think down the road, he can develop into that. And the one thing I like about Mendoza is now some of it's the offense. Like he didn't throw the ball as well vertically as Rourke did in this Indiana offense, but at Cal, they didn't really have the receivers and it wasn't really what they were trying to do. But the one thing that Mendoza does do that I appreciate, because a lot of young quarterbacks don't, he can throw over the middle of the field. And he does a lot. Being 6'5" helps in that department. So he can use the entire field. And I think that's something that Indiana appreciates and is going to look to, develop a little bit further.
Yeah, like maybe their games are a little more similar than we realize, just because like Rourke post-injury was not quite the athlete that he was. Pre-injury, he was a really damn good athlete, especially for the MAC level at quarterback, as you guys said. So, could you really have done better if you're Indiana? I don't think so. So nice get.
You look, Roman Hemby, the Maryland running back, has also committed to Indiana. A couple other spots as well. It's just that's activity where Indiana has obviously levels to get to the very top of the sport where you are able to pair really good high school recruiting with good portal work, but in terms of being able to make sure that it's not just a 1-year deal and then you come crashing down. I think that I've seen, to your point about the spending and the investment, but also there's a little bit of trust in terms of talent identification and evaluation and who they think is going to come in. I do think Fernando Mendoza is interesting because you get a lot of these. I know I talked to a lot of personnel people. A lot of personnel people like him. I talked to a lot of talent evaluators. It's a lot of talent evaluators like him. It's like we are dealing with the same scenario that the NFL has sometimes, where like the toolsy guy, like, oh yeah, and then they'll be able to go fix him. Fernando Mendoza at his best was a very fun and very capable quarterback. He also had some wild games that were not all his fault, but the Cal football experience this season was living and dying on a razor's edge. It was like low-scoring rock fights that were 1 score, and it was high-scoring shootouts that were 1 score. So everything was a little bit funky, but I'll acknowledge and I'll trust the talent evaluators. But I think mostly I'm trusting Kirk Cignetti. I think the Hoosiers offense will be just fine with Mendoza leading the way.
You could say he's the perfect Indiana quarterback because he looked really good against some of the lower competition that Cal played this year, but over against good teams, he kind of struggled a bit.
Bud, we get Eric Singleton, a player who we talked about here, former Georgia Tech wide receiver. He ends up linking up with Auburn. Is this just a continuation of what we were expecting in terms of building hype for a gotta get it kind of season for Hugh Freeze on the Plains?
I'm sure Hugh Freeze would tell you, can't take it with you, right? Got to spend it on somebody. So I think the quarterbacks available in the portal for Auburn this year were probably not quite the caliber that they had hoped. It doesn't mean that Jackson Arnold can't all of a sudden turn it around and be a really effective player for them. But in some ways, we kind of lack the studs in the portal. Right now, we don't know what a Milroe is going to do. We don't know what a Ewers is going to do, depending on if you think those guys are studs. I think by transfer portal standards, they are, if they do jump in. But they went out and got Arnold, and I assume you didn't have to pay an arm and a leg for Arnold, right? Like the guy got benched in favor of a true freshman, and Oklahoma obviously preferred Mateer over Arnold due to the production. So you got some money left over to spend, and Singleton has some real jets to him. So him plus Coleman is a great, great
nasty.
Combo. Yeah.
How many wide receiver rooms in the SEC this year were feared?
Ryan Williams was feared.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, you could say that. And LSU, when everybody was healthy and everybody was running hot, you were still, even though it was mostly Kyron Lacey at the beginning of the season. Texas, maybe.
Texas
when healthy.
Yeah.
God.
I think it's a low bar. I think that Auburn is very quickly making itself one of the
Mizzou's
wide
was at the
receiver
start
rooms.
of the year.
What?
Mizzou's would have been, but they were never healthy and all together, it felt like.
Yeah, with Theo Weiss and Luther Burden kind
Mhm.
of leading that group as well. I mean, we see this in cycles. I don't think it's a large criticism of the SEC. I don't know how many teams across the country I would say had like a really deep and feared wide receiver room the way that we see in some seasons, but Auburn's got it. It'll be a lot of fun to see if Hugh's able to cook something up as he has done before when he does have a lot of talent at the wide receiver position. The explosives tend to be there. Any other portal buzz or portal activity that you got your eye on?
It'll be interesting to see now with the JUCO stuff what happens. Like Illinois had a guy enter the portal today, Zy Chrysler, who they thought was out of eligibility, who recently found out he's got an extra year because of Diego Pavia. So it's going to be interesting to see how many guys like that are like, hey, let's see what I can get.
Okay. Bill Belichick corner. You know how I know that he's really going for it? He's adding staffers with NCAA issues. Okay, picks up a former director of player personnel from South Carolina who had it was just a level 3, but if you can accumulate a couple level 3s, that's knowledge of how to win big. Okay, so I know that he's going for it.
Is that
Edwards?
Taylor Edwards?
I think yes.
Yeah, he had come in a few searches. I know a couple coaches wanted to hire him. That might be pretty good.
I'm being serious. But bring everybody.
I've never met him, but yeah, I do like that name. Yeah.
Listen, bring me everybody who knows how to play the game. Okay, that's what Bill needs. He knows how to take care of the other stuff up in section 400. The tiny little cameras and stuff. Like he'll take care of that. But we need somebody to help teach him the college game of maximizing your inefficiencies. So I love to see that. All right. Coming up on the other side, start unpacking the quarterfinal matchups, keys to the game, what we're looking at, and more. Next. As we've discussed, it's kind of crazy because Wednesdays are like Fridays and Fridays are like Tuesdays. I mean, this Christmas in the middle of the week's got us all twisted up, but we always make time for Big Game Breakdown. Quick adjustment to the schedule. We will be doing our locks for these games on Monday, December 30th. Again, Monday, December 30th, we will be doing our locks for these quarterfinal college football playoff games. The games themselves, the Fiesta Bowl will be on New Year's Eve, then the Peach Bowl, the Rose Bowl, and the Sugar Bowl all on New Year's Day. So big game breakdown today. Then on Monday, we'll come back with our locks for the next round of the college football playoff locks. Let's start on New Year's Eve with the Fiesta Bowl, Penn State and Boise State. There is a very simple answer to how Boise State is able to move the football. How do you think Boise State's going to defend this Penn State team?
Well, I think they're going to do a lot of what they did to UNLV, or at least try to, right? The Boise defensive line is actually, I think, pretty damn good. And the Penn State offensive line is not bad, but it's not world beater. So I think they're going to let their defensive line try to win. I don't think you can just go insane load the box and dare Penn State to hit those explosives on you, because they've not done it consistently, but at times this year, the Nittany Lions have shown that they can do it. So I think you try to let your defensive line eat and see if you can get Drew to make some mistakes or something. Not that he throws very many interceptions, but he does. Sometimes he's late, sometimes he just misses something. I think you're going to have. I think that's your only hope for your boys. I don't really think that your secondary can hold up against a decent but not special group of Penn State receivers.
I mean, something I learned, I had to write a piece for Christmas morning that they wanted me to publish a naughty and nice list for all.
Oh, that's creative because of Christmas.
Yeah, because get it,
Santa. I got it.
Never seen that before.
Yeah,
I was making a list and I was checking it twice, just looking for little things I could write. And something I discovered that, I mean, Do you know who the worst tackling team in the country is?
It can't be Boise State.
It's Boise State.
That's got to be past. Like that's got to be on the back end because this is a team that ranks second in the nation in sacks behind only Ole Miss. As we've said, their defensive line can get after it. But yeah, I mean,
according to True Media's missed tackle rate, Boise State has a missed tackle rate of 20%, which ranks 134th out of 134 teams. So, like, this is one of those things that's interesting to me because as far as the matchup is concerned, like Penn State, not overly explosive, hasn't been all year long. It had some explosive runs early in the season, and it still gets some occasionally, but overall, not incredible. So if you're Boise, then you're Penn State. Like the one thing you're great at is first down offense, getting into second and short and third and short, and just keeping yourself ahead of schedule. If you're Boise State and you have to keep everything in front of you, the numbers suggest you're awful at keeping everything in front of you because you miss a bunch of tackles. So it is going to be an interesting spot, especially because like Boise State hasn't faced Tyler Warren or Nick Singleton or Katron Allen, these giant behemoth men that are just going to try to run you over. And it could be a problem for them. So I think that we're going to see a lot of diving at ankles, trying to trip guys up, getting them down, because clearly the way that Boise's been doing it elsewhere against Mountain West teams, not nearly as effective. So I think tackling is going to be key for Boise, but I also mentioned like Penn State's really good on first down. I think that you're going to need to create some havoc, some chaos on first down. You're going to have to get them behind schedule. You're going to have to, force some incompletions, get them in the second and longs, force them to get in the third and longs, because they've just been so good at avoiding it all year. And when they do get in it, like anybody else, they're not nearly as effective. So if I'm Boise, I might consider maybe just bringing a little more pressure, bringing a little more blitzes than maybe I typically do in those spots, just to try to keep them off balance, but that might prove very ineffective.
Of the games this weekend, clearly, I think we're all nervous. We don't want to see more blowouts. This one, much like the last weekend, again, I thought I was wrong on a couple of them big time. This one, I worry about a blowout factor too.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I just feel like this is going to be the physicality that Boise State hasn't finished. But since you asked the question, I don't think their game plan is that dissimilar to what Penn State wants to do defensively to Boise State, right? You want to try to take away Singleton and Allen and try to have Drew Aller and his cast of characters beat you.
Tyler and the Warrens.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah.
I mean, I think that's pretty easy, but I do feel like they're going to have to bring more guys in the box to do that, which is going to present some opportunities for them to hit some big plays. And maybe it's not even Tyler Warren, because they'll probably have a game plan for him. This is one where I think Drew Aller might have an opportunity to step up. And what he's done before and what he's done throughout his whole career is he's had bigger games against the teams that aren't as dominant on the defensive side of the ball. So I think this could be a big Drew Aller game.
Penn State did not look good offensively, and the team had a never in doubt win against SMU. Mm-hmm. Like it is Boise State needs to force the issue, because I do think that if they don't really make Penn State push, I think Penn State will be perfectly fine to just run the football, hope for missed tackles, and wear them down. Because what I think we are seeing is Katron Allen and Nick Singleton have always had an advantage about the fact that they share the backfield. But because we've also incorporated all these other runners, including Bo Pribula, who's no longer with the team right now, it seems like they've got less tread on the tires. It doesn't seem like those are two backs that are wearing down at a time when a lot of players are wearing down, at a time when other playoff teams are having to just grab new bodies to throw them into the backfield. Feels like those are two very strong, very gifted running backs that are running hot at a good time. This is where I think sharing all of those carries, sharing all that responsibility is paid off. And that's where, to me, Boise State tackling issues with all of that physicality, it just seems like a big alarm bell, where James Franklin, Andy Kotelnicki, that staff, they might just be like, we're just going to keep punching. We don't even need to push the ball down the field. We're just going to continue to just do body blows, because we think eventually we're going to break them. That seems, and Danny, I agree. This one could be like, oh, the one game on New Year's Eve. Oh, it's the playoff game. And like way before the ball drops, you're like, okay, night. Definite. Oh, except you're not going to do that because you're going to come watch us on the Instant Reaction Show at the conclusion of Penn State, Boise State, when we'll be breaking down everything that we saw and everything that we learned and looking ahead to the semifinal matchups. But yeah, I could definitely see Penn State rolling in this one.
How many catches does Genty have? Like in some of the bigger games, they do try to use him more as a receiver. That's something I want to look for here. I don't think that the Boise offensive line is a downgrade from SMU. And I think it's probably better, actually. So
Okay.
I don't think Penn State can totally bully them
The way they
maybe they can. Like maybe Penn State is just that good, but I do think I would take
Jennings is
Boise
better
offensive
than
line.
Madsen, though.
Yes,
Yes.
he is. Although it would be kind of difficult for Madsen to play worse than Jennings actually did.
Then Jennings in that game. Jennings in that game was number 140 of 134 quarterbacks on that day in that game.
Yeah.
That was horrendous.
To Bud's point, I do think this would have to be like a Dirk Cutter game where he kind of gets in his bag as the offensive coordinator and figures out, a way to have something either, to come up with creative ways to use Genty like Bud is talking about. But I almost feel like this is one where the Boise State receivers might have to step up, whether it's Camper or whether tight end or somebody else because I do think this is a game where, and this is why I think Maddox Madsen's put up pretty good numbers is you're getting great matchups all the time. And what I don't know of is if Penn State has to give you those numbers. If they do, then I'll have to step up. But like Penn State may not have to sell out as much as other teams Boise State has faced all year long.
It'll also be interesting to me to see how the Boise offensive line handles all the blitzes they're going to see and how Maddox Madsen handles it. Because I don't know what he has seen in comparison to what Penn State typically does, how prepared he is for it. Because of the teams remaining, nobody blitzes more than this Penn State defense. And if you look at Boise overall, like their run defense, I've a lot of Boise State fans have talked about Ashton Genty's performance against Oregon as proof that, they'll be able to run the ball against Penn State. Penn State ranks 9th in EPA per rush on defense. Oregon ranks 86th. It's not really the same thing. Like Penn State's defense is better against the run than Oregon's is. It's better than Oregon's in just about every single department. So I don't think it's going to be that simple for Boise State to just hand off to Genty and expect him to get some big plays, because that's the other thing. Penn State doesn't really allow a ton of big plays. But you know what defense does allow more big plays, more explosive plays at a higher rate than any other defense left in the playoff? Boise State. They also allow more yards per play. So on the other side of the ball, I don't know how many stops this Boise State's going to be able to get against this Penn State offense. Like they haven't been as explosive, like I said, in the second half of the season as they were early, but they're still very good at staying on schedule. I do feel like the spread tells you everything. I do feel like it's kind of like what you were saying, Danny, that there is a good chance that this one gets out of hand quick.
I think I caught this on the broadcast for Penn State SMU, but how about Abdul Carter legitimately feeling snubbed for the Defensive Player of the Year awards?
Yeah.
Like I didn't know players
like it.
I didn't know players were still like taking that, and now I took that personally. The way that they explained it on the broadcast, so he was a finalist for the Nagurski. That went to South Carolina's Kyle Kennard. He was a finalist for the Bednarik. That went to Travis Hunter. And Abdul Carter has taken issue with this, and he has decided to do what he did. They said he did like 100 more push-ups a day or something. I mean, this man was snubbed by 40 FWAA voters, across the country. And now he is taking it out on all of his opposition in the college football playoff. Let's go. I need some more spite and motivation like that. I'm always happy to hear that. I hope we get another Abdul Carter game where he's just playing completely out of his mind.
To be fair, Genty feels the same way about the Heisman. These are two dudes who are both mad at Travis Hunter.
Yeah.
What happens when they meet at the line of scrimmage?
Oh my goodness. And I will say this, because I don't think Abdul Carter has the Twitter following of the Boise State Mafia crowd or the running back Mafia crowd, whatever it is, but they are noisy, including one Damian Harris. Like if Genty goes off against Penn State, oh my goodness, they're going to be rabid out there.
Damian sticking up for a running back.
Damian's gonna hit him with "I said what I said."
Yeah.
Yeah. But Abdul Carter is sitting there doing push-ups, and he's got a picture of former FWAA president Dennis Dodd. He's looking at him in the eyes, just going after it. All right. Okay, go ahead. Anything else on Penn State, Boise State?
My last thought is going to be, I really do think Penn State is just going to put 8 guys in the box all day and dare Boise to beat it any other way.
Yeah, totally. That's why I think it'll have to be in others. I don't think it's Genty that beats him. If Maddox Matson steps up, has a big game, or a receiver goes off and has a couple touchdowns. The other thing is, though, I think they're going to have to slow down that offense. That's the thing that concerns me probably the most, is that they're able to stop Penn State's offense.
Vibes-wise, if Boise State is running gimmicky, gadgety plays in the Fiesta Bowl, let's go. They
kind of have to do a Statue of Liberty, just like
have to.
I mean, just to throw it back.
Yeah, let's go. All right. Coming up on the other side, we will pivot to New Year's Day, a triple header of college football playoff quarterfinal action. We'll take you inside the matchups and more next.
CBS Sports HQ, giving you college football coverage unlike anyone else.
We're talking Big Ten.
Pre- and post-game coverage.
Are you encouraged with the way that this team responded?
Along with breaking news.
A lot of movement in the rankings this week.
Highlights and expert analysis.
That streak could be in jeopardy here.
Sure. What was your main takeaway from this game? How impressive was his domination?
That really changed the football game.
Let's go ahead and have some more fun.
Another wild ending.
The chaos continues.
Turn to CBS Sports HQ.
While we're still, let's go Ian in the tailgate. Who rushes for more yards, Singleton and Allen combined, or Ashton Genty?
Singleton and Allen.
Yeah.
Okay. And then one more. Would a title game appearance mean more for James Franklin or Marcus Freeman?
Franklin.
I think that'd mean a lot for both.
Agree. But
the tenure and the lack of playoff appearances and success, I think it means more for Franklin. I mean, Freeman
does Marcus
is kind of
Freeman have a lot of playoff success?
No, but he's younger. He's only been in it 3 years. I think that comes into play. I mean, clearly, I like him. I like Marcus Freeman a ton. I just think it means more for Franklin to kind of get some of his critics off his back.
Just means more.
Get it? Yeah, I'm going to agree with that. I think that it's Franklin. Bud, you're muted.
Sorry. I think it's Franklin as well.
Okay.
I just basically what Tom said, like it matters for both, but because of the tenure.
But what you working with today? A little flu, a little
yeah, man. Not great, but like thankfully kids didn't get it. So just pushing through. Have not done a whole lot of research on these bowl games though. So
the bowl games or the playoff games?
Bowl games. Playoffs I got done.
Okay. That's good. I mean, look.
Got to prioritize, right?
Yeah, we got to prioritize. Don't worry about it. We got you on the other stuff.
Chip in the chair.
All right. Texas, Arizona State, Peach Bowl to get things started on New Year's Day. The Longhorns showed us something against Clemson. I think that there was also some Texas fans that came out of that game being like, okay, so Cade Klubnik's either awesome or maybe we've got some concerns when it comes to how we're going to defend the pass. Now, you're going up against an Arizona State team that, as we've detailed extensively, does not have its 1,000-yard leading receiver, Jordan Tyson. But that did not stop Sam Leavitt from having a good enough game against Iowa State, though we are dealing with a very different defense when we go from Iowa State onto the Texas Longhorns. So, Danny, when you're looking at this matchup right here, what are you going to be having your eyes on between Texas and Arizona State?
Can Arizona State slow down Texas offensively? Because I think that I do think, as good as I think Cade Klubnik played, we talked a lot about that going into that game. It's probably one of the better quarterbacks they had faced on the season. I also think Sam Leavitt is a really good quarterback that manages the game really nicely. He's also got enough athleticism where if he does get in trouble, he can get outside the pocket against Texas's pass rush, which can be very frustrating, buying time. I am worried about the loss of Tyson, but their other guys did step up pretty well in the Big 12 championship game. So, I feel like the offense can produce enough to compete. I worry about the other side of the ball being able to slow down Texas offense, especially if Isaiah Bond is back if those offensive line, which were banged up, are playing, which it does look like they are. It's not as significant as people thought. I just feel like that's not the best matchup for Arizona State. Like, I feel like the way for Arizona State to compete is to be in a higher scoring game.
Agreed. I mean, I feel like it's safe to say that Arizona State's the worst defense remaining in the college football playoff. I don't know if I'd get any pushback on that from you guys.
No.
Probably not.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a classic battle because we've talked a lot about it, at least I have, and they looked good against Clemson, but we've talked about Clemson's or Texas's red zone offense and how it struggles. Well, this is a great matchup for them because Arizona State's red zone defense is horrific. Like, they give up 4.58 points per trip. That is 101st nationally. Not great. But the one thing that it kind of flips the other way, Arizona State defense typically all season long has done a good job of forcing turnovers. Like, they rank 19th in turnover rate forced. Well, did you know Texas's offense is horrible holding onto the ball? They have a turnover rate of 13.1%, which ranks 100th nationally. Their 23 total turnovers rank 124th. So you've got one team that can't hold on to the ball versus another team that's done a good job of taking away the ball. But then you've got one team who can't score in the red zone versus another team who can't stop anybody in the red zone. And I think the one area of this matchup which terrifies me if I'm an Arizona State fan is run defense wise, they've been okay. Like, they've actually been pretty decent. It's their pass defense that I think is just a real weakness. So now you've got to go up against this offensive line, which we have seen, unless it's facing Georgia, does an excellent job of protecting Quinn Ewers and keeping people off his ass, which could mitigate what pass rush you have. And now your corners have to cover these Texas receivers, who I think you could argue are the best ones they have seen this year, maybe outside of – did they play Colorado this year?
They did not.
Yeah, okay, so they might be the best ones you've seen all damn year long. So it could be a problem. Like, this is one of those spots where you're right, Danny. It needs to be a shootout because Arizona State's not going to be able to win this game 20-17. They need to get like 35 or more to have any real shot here.
They need to be in Arizona State needs to keep this within units of 7 because they can't kick field goals.
Mm-hmm.
Like this, I mean, we're talking about statistically one of the worst field goal kicking teams in the country. It changes their decision making when they do get into red zone and scoring type situations. I think that they only have 9 made field goals on the season, and they've only attempted 17 across their 13 games of action. They're just, 4 times in since the calendar flipped to October, there were 4 games where they just didn't even kick a single field goal. It's just not we have a team that struggles leaving points on the table in the red zone versus another team that has to score touchdowns or else they're totally screwed. It is a game where I feel like Texas could control it, but yet you might be sweating the spread, or you at least might have a shot for Cam Scatterboo to kick down the back door because, like we saw in the Big 12 title game, Cam is what do you call him, Tom? An angry ball of knives.
Yes, he's just a tiny little bowling ball.
Yeah,
sharp edges.
I could see him going bananas. I don't know if it's going to be good enough to get Arizona State to win, but in a very special performance, when an early start on New Year's Day inside, I could see Arizona State being a little frisky in terms of the score and the spread, but the matchup disadvantages feel pretty significant.
How much does it suck that they're playing this where they are? Like, seriously, you have the Fiesta Bowl right there, and you make these guys go play in the Georgia Dome. I just that's silly to me.
But no, hey, that's the 4 seed versus the 3 seed.
Yeah.
That's Boise State gets the advantage.
So that's but is that also insurance? No, that is because they are the higher seed over Texas. They should have the home field then, right? They should have the advantage regionally.
Right. Yeah. Like you'd want them
they
to.
They should have sent them.
But you can't because Boise is the 3 seed, so they get the preferential treatment, and now they have the home field advantage over Penn State.
It would be a lot better if these games were in Boise and Tempe.
Oh, God, yeah.
Whoa,
but based on the current format,
yeah.
It's just,
Yeah, like this kind of sucks.
Except the Cotton Bowl, which we are so excited for.
Well, the Cotton Bowl's going to have absolute bangers.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure. So, Texas State scored 28. Texas Tech scored 30. Kansas scored 31. Cincinnati scored 24. That was, kind of whatever. They didn't have the quarterback that day. UCF scored 31. BYU scored 23. I don't think this Arizona State defense is bad, but man, that really that drives Tom's point home because those are not necessarily the best offenses in the country right there who have moved it on this defense. I think Brian Ward does a really good job with these guys. Like I think they really do get all they can out of there. But man, I don't know if they've seen like quality bodies like they're going to see with Texas. So, like to me, the Big 12 is kind of a material step down in terms of like line of scrimmage play than other leagues are. But also like Quinn Ewers has to actually play well. And last game he didn't have to really play well because they just limited what they asked him to do. They just ran the ball all the time. So maybe he doesn't have to, but I think there's a pretty good chance that Arizona State will not allow themselves to like be run off for 350. Like, all right, Quinn, beat us if you can. If you blow us out, you blow us out. But like we're playing to win, not to cover.
Texas losing in this spot, bad for business, but great for content.
Yes.
Yeah.
For sure.
Okay.
Yes. God, yes.
We are all Longhorns fans, so we can hang out with them at the Cotton Bowl.
Right. Then they can all come out. Actually, now's a great time to remind everybody that on January 9th at Tannehill's Tavern and Music Hall in Fort Worth, Texas, you can come hang out with us. It is the first ever Cover 3 Tailgate Live for the College Football Playoff. The event on January 9th runs from 5 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. Central Time. That is right into the Orange Bowl. We'll then have a watch party right there at Tannehill's. Come and hang out with us while we watch the Orange Bowl. The next day will be the Cotton Bowl. So you can scan that QR code on the screen and RSVP, because you got to RSVP in order to get into the event. Now, there are also some other options if you want to secure some seating, if you want to get yourself a little goodie bag. We're going to have treats with us, and we want you to come and join us for the College Football Playoff Tailgate Live, brought to you by the Cover 3 podcast at Tannehill's Tavern and Music Hall. There's the RSVP. You can scan the QR code on the screen. You can also hit the link in the episode description here on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts.
Oh, quick shout out.
Yes.
Yesterday morning, early, went for a walk with my wife. Christmas morning out in Delray Beach. Guy running by with his headphones on. He goes, "Hey, you Danny Kanell?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Cover 3 is the best. Let's go."
Yes.
He said, "Cover 3." And he said, make sure I get a shout out on there. So Mike, I don't know where you're from. I don't know what team you root for. It's probably a Gator because he didn't say anything. But he said, "How about a shout out on the pod?" So good looking out.
Merry Christmas, Mike.
Merry Christmas.
We appreciate you spreading the love. Yeah. So there at the Cotton Bowl will be the winners of Texas and Arizona State, and this next game, Oregon, Ohio State, banger of a Rose Bowl matchup, a traditional Rose Bowl matchup, even as it features two teams from the Big Ten. Man, it's kind of a monster. It's a little heavy. Danny, where do we start with this one?
I tell you, this one, so if it plays out the exact same last time, I love it. Like this one, I think has the potential to be the best game of the weekend, right?
100
teams at their best. Yes. I think the question is, because Oregon has been the most consistent team the entire season. It's like, all right, what adjustments can you make if you're Ohio State? One, clearly, I want to see the version that played against Tennessee, which was aggressive. They opened it up somewhat. They let Will Howard throw the football down the field. They were able to take advantage of it. I think this defense will be a bigger challenge. I want to see how they handle, again, it's a question for Ryan Day. The thing that surprised me the first time around in Eugene was without Jordan Birch, I think we were all kind of like, man, Oregon did a pretty good job. Their defensive line against Ohio State's offensive line. Like that to me is one place they have got to be better if they want to win this football game. Like they've got to handle Birch and Mateo Uyunglele and the rest of the guys along that front seven. Just doing a better job establishing themselves and not having negative plays throughout the game.
I like that.
And somebody has to figure out how to make Dylan Gabriel uncomfortable.
I think we're going to see another tennis match.
Yeah.
I think it's going to look a lot like the first game. I think that just based on what I have seen from Oregon in these games, like going to the Big Ten championship, what was it, 45-37? The first game between these two both got to the 40s, even going to the Boise State game. Like let me see. I got it in my.
It was mid 30s, right?
Yeah.
32, 31, 33, 32.
Yeah, because like Oregon is the only team in the playoff who's played 3 other playoff teams that are still alive right now. And on the season, like their defense, their success rate is, let's see, blah, 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 blah. They rank ninth nationally in oh wait, I'm looking at the wrong thing. I'm sorry, guys, got my notes mixed up here. They're allowing 1.56 points per possession. That ranks 19th. Their success rate is 62.6%. That ranks 15th. But in their 3 games against Boise, Ohio State, and Penn State, it jumps to 2.68 points per drive and a success rate of 55.8. So play better teams, play worse defense. But like there is a significant drop off from this defense against better offenses like these 3 teams. And I think we're going to see something like that in this game still, because Oregon won the regular season meeting, but let's not forget, like it literally came down to Will Howard losing track of time, or else Ohio State ends up with the win there. And I think if you look at how Ohio State played last week, that looked like the Ohio State kind of flying death machine that when they're operating at full capacity is really difficult to beat. The offensive line has been improving as they've gotten, they've been dealing with the injuries, but the more they play together, the better they start to look, although this will be a very tough test. But Tennessee's defensive line is really good too. So it's not like they weren't tested last week. So it's a really interesting spot. But at the same time, offensively, we saw that Oregon knows how to exploit Ohio State's defense, and their offensive line in that game did a good job against Ohio State's defensive line, at least holding off the pressure. And that is one of those things with Ohio State's defensive front. They're kind of schizo. Like some weeks they look great, and some weeks they're a completely different person. They're just really not getting that kind of pressure. And when they don't, it exposes some of the flaws that they might, well, not flaws, but it's harder for a secondary to cover when they're not getting home and they've got to cover for longer. And we've seen Oregon's got guys in the passing game who can beat you deep because they did it to Ohio State repeatedly in that first game. Dylan Gabriel, as the season has gone on, has been better and better, and he's really taken command of that offense, and it's just humming. So I look at this matchup, and we've talked about it. You get these kind of games between these elite programs over the last few years, and typically what you see are high-scoring affairs because the defenses just have no prayer once they face offenses that are operating like this with receivers like this and quarterbacks and running backs and blah, blah, blah. So I think this game will be another banger. I think it will look like the first game, and barring a bunch of turnovers from one side, which we don't really see from either one of these teams, I don't think it's going to be close. It's going to come down to the fourth quarter. It could be one of those whoever has the ball last kind of situations.
Let's go.
I hope it does. I'm not convinced that Ohio State can duplicate what it did on offense against Tennessee when it runs up against Oregon. I think they got some really favorable looks, got the pitches they want to hit and hit those out of the ballpark. But you don't get that every single game. And I guarantee you that Oregon won't give them the exact same type response to some of the looks that they showed. I think Ohio State did have to tip their hand a little bit against Tennessee, and I think that is to Oregon's advantage here. Now, it doesn't mean that Chip Kelly can't come up with different stuff. In fact, I'm pretty sure that he will, but I don't know about this Ohio State offensive line. They handled Tennessee pretty well. They had Tennessee very off balance, and they had them very positive game script in their favor. But some of the run game stuff was just okay, and I think that Oregon is a better defense than Tennessee is personally. I just think Tennessee's played a bunch of really crappy quarterbacks for the most part this year. So I like Oregon here. I think that their defensive line can give Ohio State some problems. And if I'm Oregon, I'm not allowing Jeremiah Smith and Puka to get over the top on me. I want to see if Howard can be a little more consistent with that. Maybe he can, right? But I don't know that he can. I think Oregon can block Ohio State. They did the first time around. Those 2 tackles for the Ducks are, I think, not way better, but I think we would take them 1-2 over anybody on Tennessee, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I do think it's sometimes Sawyer and sometimes JTT, they show up and sometimes they don't. That's true. Those guys don't always, play amazing. There is the other aspect of who they're playing against, and that seems to matter quite a bit as well. I think Oregon can block these guys. So I like Oregon.
Do you think there's a rest? How do you break up rust?
I haven't thought about it a whole lot, to be honest, but I do think what I just said about the having to show your hand. That Tennessee spread was a touchdown. You had to kind of not empty the clip, but you had to at least like open it up with a couple new bullets, right?
Or just go back to the ones that you should have been using before.
That's fair. That's fair.
Like highlighting Jeremiah Smith and Emeka Ibuka. Like that's something that they just chose not to do, and then they chose to do it. I think Oregon, to your point, defensively will be set up there. I would not be surprised if the layoff does end up impacting some of the game. I just don't think that. I think Oregon's too good to have it impact more than just like the opening frames. I don't know how else to say it. Just like those first stretches of like each team, trying to get a haymaker in. Like Ohio State might come in and might be running really hot. You've got to think they are surging with confidence. And in a similar way to how, remember Danny Cardale told us it was his first time back in Indianapolis, like since the 59-0 game that he was the quarterback of. And I was joking. It's like, oh, we should just stand near Cardale, kind of pick up some of that glow up, right there. But Ohio State came in on fire off of that performance. And I think that was a huge difference than what Alabama brought to its semifinal matchup, where the Buckeyes just had kind of had even long layoff there and an equal layoff. I understand, but that's something where I think Ohio State comes out of the Tennessee game, not necessarily with any schematic advantages, but yeah, with a little bit of a confidence advantage and a rhythm advantage that they might be able to have against Oregon. Oregon's too good. I think Dan Lanning is too good of a coach to allow that to slip for too long, especially because Oregon has one of the best first half offenses in the country. They've got one of the best second quarters offenses in the country. They do a great job of being able to maximize possessions before they go into the locker room. They play the book 100% well, but I would not be surprised if Ohio State starts fast if there is an impact of rest rust.
I don't think rest rust is a real thing.
Ooh.
I think it's just a hindsight debate.
Yeah, I agree. No, I think there's something to momentum coming in, but it affects certain teams differently. I don't know if it's going to affect Dan Lanning's squad. Like last year, would they have a month off before now again, the opponent was different, but their bowl game, they came out on fire.
They decapitated Liberty.
Now Liberty's a different opponent. It's not Ohio State, but I think some of it may depend on the coach and the coaching style. And if teams really are, treated differently, where they don't do a lot of live drills and they may get a little bit softer or not as battle tested. I have a feeling Lanning's got a pretty good physical approach to practicing. Not that they're going 11 on 11 full pads, but I just feel like he's somebody who wouldn't let the intensity level drop off in practice. And like you said, Ohio State had an extra week before the Tennessee game because they weren't playing in the Big Ten championship. They ramped it up like that.
Yeah, but Tennessee had the same rest.
Right. So it's
that's the thing.
Like time off.
The first round was both games were either tight conference championship game losers or winners against two teams you didn't play in conference championship week. So there really was no rest versus rest debate in the first round.
Okay.
But again, I don't think it's real.
I think it's real, but it can be I think it's just something else that each coaching staff has to put in place in terms of how they build their schedule. Like when they want to do what, in terms of just trying to make sure that with whatever time you're going to spend with your family, with whatever your other stuff you've got going on, that we just get you where you need to be physically and mentally for the start of the game. That's a coaching skill, I think, to be able to manage these long layoffs in the way that the postseason unfolds in college football when you're still dealing with 18 to 22-year-olds or 25, 26 for Dylan Gabriel. Okay. Then, as I mentioned, we will have the whiplash. An absolute banger. Ohio State and Oregon could be a track meet. And then we will see two teams taking hammers to each other's hands and heads as Georgia and Notre Dame put together just a real slobber knocker. Dog's going to be all right.
Which defense is showing up?
Because Georgia's defense can be a little over the place. Yeah. Even within the context of the same game.
Yeah. I think some of this has to do with how they defend a mobile quarterback, right? Because, we had Haynes King was moving around a little bit. He was able to have some success. Jalen Milroe, we know what he can do. He can have some success. So, and I know they shut down Klubnik, but that was kind of we talked about Cade Klubnik kind of discovering his legs throughout the season where it got a little bit better. That to me determines the outcome of the game is kind of what can Georgia do versus Riley Leonard, Jeremiah Love, that rushing attack. If they can take it away, I still don't have the confidence that Riley Leonard can go out there and have a performance like Milroe did or like Haynes King did passing the football. He may not have to. Because he's tough, man. He's tough to bring down. He's not my favorite quarterback in the playoffs, but man, the dude wins. He figures it out. It may not look pretty. I mean, people in the chat, I think the last time we were doing some of the wrap up, like some of his jump passes are incredibly awkward. It's like, what? And they're ugly misses, but he's been way better with turning the ball over and not turning the ball over, and just kind of managing the game a little bit better. But I don't know. I lean towards the advantage of all the losses in this one because you got Carson Beck, no Riley Mills. I mean, clearly quarterback is a more significant position. I do think it's going to be tough to lose your biggest producer on the defense in the interior versus Georgia. But in a rock fight, which I think we can all probably agree it's going to be kind of ugly, I'm going to kind of lean towards Notre Dame.
Yeah, I was really looking forward to watching Riley Mills go up against Tate Ratledge in the interior of Georgia's offensive line. We lose that, and that is significant for Notre Dame. He is their leading sacks, leading tackle for loss. He is their primary disruptor on the interior. That said, they've got good guys. So it's like I don't think that defense is going to fall off a cliff without him. I just think it lowers its intensity, but lowers its level just slightly without him. I do think that this is going to come down to the same thing with Georgia when you're facing the Bulldogs. Mills is huge, but can you get pressure off the edge? Because that's where you want to attack Georgia's offensive line, is at the tackle spots. That is where it's been weak all year. That's where you're going to win more often than not. So can Notre Dame do that? Because you've got Gunnar Stockton back there. And I know he was thrown into the fire in a really tough situation, and he nearly cost Georgia that game. And if defensive backs could read blocks, they would be on defense. And that's what happened in that game. So I have serious concerns about him, but at least you've got these last couple of weeks to get him up to speed. It's not like Carson Beck was at practice, taking reps, trying to fool himself into thinking he could play. He hasn't been with the team. So Gunnar Stockton has been QB1 in practice since this all happened. So you would expect him to look better in this game. It's just, how good is Gunnar Stockton? And I've seen a lot of people say, well, Carson Beck stinks. It's probably going to be an upgrade. Carson Beck doesn't stink, man. Carson Beck was playing behind a dog poop line for a few weeks. He looked like a dog poop quarterback because of it. Is Gunnar Stockton good enough? Are these receivers good enough to make plays against this Notre Dame defense? I don't know. I feel like if I'm Georgia, if I want to win this game, it better be 14-10. I don't think if I get into a shootout, I'm going to have much of a shot to win this. But at the same time, on the flip side, I don't think Notre Dame can win a shootout either. And if you're Georgia, the key is stop them on first down. Get them in third and long, because the Notre Dame offense is horrible in third and long situations, which shouldn't come as a surprise to anybody who's ever seen Riley Leonard play. He is not somebody you want dropping back to throw in those situations. So that's where this game is going to be won. Can Notre Dame get pressure on the edge? Can Georgia stop them on first down? Those two things will determine this game.
Again, I think I've mentioned it before. Maybe I did going into the Indiana game, but Notre Dame, one of the worst third down teams in terms of their conversion percentage, their down to distance. They also have faced the least third downs in the entire country.
Mm-hmm.
They have a top 5 scoring offense, but they also face third down the least of anybody out of the 134 FBS teams. Most teams do not get Notre Dame to third down, therefore exposing what is a little bit of a weakness, which means that Notre Dame is so good they can mask that. But Georgia is a level of defense that I think can put them there. And to your point, Tom, you get them in that third and long scenario, and then you just let Walker pin his ears back and just go make a play. Because in a 17-14, 20-17, 14-10 kind of game, a strip sack in the second half will change the game entirely. So I look at those and I see those as opportunities for Georgia to be able to overcome all of the setbacks that they've had, both in terms of the lack of consistency throughout the season and also places where they might not have a big edge over the Fighting Irish here.
So I think Georgia has more difference makers, but Notre Dame has fewer holes.
Yeah,
it's a good summary.
I like that.
I think Leonard's legs will be huge in this. Not only just design runs and things. That we saw what Haynes King did against this Georgia defense. And I think you will have to see, the Irish copy some of that. But at its core, this is still a Nick Saban, Bill Belichick inspired defense. And, Kirby is probably going to make Notre Dame win one-on-ones on the outside against these corners who have not been amazing necessarily this year, but they're not bad. Like, they're still one of the better, secondaries in the country. Can they win one-on-ones outside against Georgia? If not, I think Georgia's just going to sit there and try to win this game by outnumbering the Irish with bodies. Now, that kind of comes to the point of Leonard. His sack avoidance is really pretty special. And it's like, he's not that hard to pressure, but he's really hard to get down once you do pressure him. And that's sort of, I think, where if you're Kirby Smart, if you're losing sleep this week, it's because Leonard can scramble around, make things happen with his legs, and throw the ball after scrambling. So I think that is going to be pretty huge. Irish probably try to think, we'll see about the screen game stuff, because Georgia has tackled the screen stuff this year pretty well, although maybe not so great against Tech, which is interesting because Texas came out and tried it much like Tech did, and then obviously.
But they were flying to the ball and wrapping up. I mean, that's the thing is, like,
somebody been working on something in practice.
Yeah, exactly. But I see that one as, Schumann and Kirby. They're just like, okay, here's what we're gonna do is we're just gonna sit them back, and then when you see the ball go, like it's just
right,
because you've got that athleticism and the talent and size at those positions. You would definitely rather keep everything in front of you and just fly to the ball.
If it's turnover neutral, I gotta think that just the team who wins explosive plays on early downs wins this, which, I mean, hey, that's a pretty deciding factor in the game. But like that will probably be huge. I think both these teams are sort of DOA when they're behind the chains, especially Georgia with Stockton. Like, we can talk about how the Irish have not played well when behind the chains. That's true. But also, like, do we really think Stockton will, with a bunch of receivers who are okay, but like not amazing, especially without Colby back. The receiver got suspended. So
Colby Young.
Yeah. I don't know. We will see on that. Is there some chance Georgia can just run it down their throat?
No.
I don't think the Irish will just allow that to happen. But
no.
I don't think Georgia's good enough at it.
Yeah, and I get the sense that Notre Dame loves what it has defensively, and there's no belief that could happen.
No, this is just between us. Just talking shop here. We would never encourage this. If you're Georgia, are you taking as many shots at Riley Leonard as you can?
Yes.
You're willing to sacrifice maybe a personal foul or two if you have to.
Yes.
What did John legendary Temple basketball coach
John Chaney?
John Chaney.
What do you say? Send in the goons.
Yeah.
like when they say Mighty Ducks, it's like 2 minutes, well worth it.
Yeah.
Saying it's like, this is one of those times where it's like, again, not encouraging, but if he starts to slide and maybe, I don't know, just
the echo of the whistle.
Yeah.
And look, we saw him at Duke going out there and playing, on bad ankles and, all kinds of stuff. But buddy, he was a different player when he was, I don't know. I like Ryan in the tailgate observing that we're just going to see like 15 tunnel screens between these two teams in this game. They're just going to move the ball to the perimeter and just let bodies go flying, see if you can end up popping one, because it's just going to be that kind of game. A game that's either played in a phone booth or you're just trying to get out there where you've got some numbers. The Georgia wide receiver position, you are going up against a Notre Dame secondary with some playmakers. Gunnar Stockton, don't make a mistake. Xavier Watts will make you pay. It'll be something else. Any other final thoughts here?
Just one. If this game is a blowout, who do you guys have winning? Like, which side do you think is more likely to blow out the other?
Notre Dame is more likely to blow out Georgia.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, me too. I just think that, like, the recipe for that happening is Gunnar Stockton, multiple turnovers.
Yes.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. My pick is Georgia to win. My pick is Georgia to win. But if you're going to say which one is more likely to run away with it, it becomes so clear early on in the game that Gunnar can't play.
That's not inconsistent with logic. right? Like,
No.
I mean, you project that Georgia wins more often than it loses, but the tail distribution for a Notre Dame blowout is larger than the tail for the Georgia blowout.
Look at you. Yeah. Come on, Betty. I know you're fighting through it, but you just pulled that out and just delivered it.
I'm like,
It's a hammer
the
right
chat's
there.
like, what? I'm like, yeah, bro. Like, that's, yeah.
All right. So this is.
I get blamed for a lot of this mute button stuff. That was pretty good muting. Like 3-4 minutes.
Hey, y'all should be happy about that mute. Okay.
It's got the cadence down.
Yeah. All right. So before we remind everybody about what's coming up, Thursday, you've got Pitt, Toledo, Rutgers, Kansas State, Arkansas State, Bowling Green. We already discussed the 68 Ventures Bowl. Then Friday and Saturday, we've got Oklahoma, Navy, Georgia Tech, Vanderbilt, Texas Tech, Arkansas, Syracuse, Washington State, USC, Texas A&M. Then Saturday, loaded up, UNC, UConn, Boston College, Nebraska, TCU, Louisiana, Miami, Iowa State, Miami, Ohio, Colorado State, ECU, NC State, Colorado, BYU, and Army, Louisiana Tech. Which of these games, which of these matchups, what's got your attention looking ahead at that slate?
The Pop-Tarts Bowl.
Yeah.
That's going to be fun.
That is my attention too.
The Pop-Tarts Bowl goes right into the Alamo Bowl, and the Alamo Bowl is Colorado, BYU. And so you've got Cam Ward and Shadur Sanders, in competition for QB1. They both have said they're going to play, and one's going to go right before the other. There is kind of a fun dynamic that could be playing off where on Saturday afternoon, we're just watching the top two quarterbacks in the NFL draft run out there and try to light it up in a bowl game, which sign me up. That is super entertaining and fun stuff to watch.
I'm also very interested in the Birmingham Bowl.
That would be Georgia Tech and Vanderbilt, just a clinical clinical work in being able to get your blocking assignments down just right.
And for narrative purposes, what happens if Navy beats the Oklahoma team that beat Alabama by 21?
You mean when Navy beats Oklahoma?
I'm just saying, for narrative purposes.
The Service Academy has won the last 3 Armed Forces Bowls. Because the Big 12 team that has shown up here, and remember, this is another one of these examples where you're actually carrying on the bowl ties from your previous conference. That's how we end up getting Colorado and BYU, current Big 12 members, playing against each other in the Alamo Bowl. It's because the Pac-12 still has that bowl tie. So we have seen the Big 12 team, in this case, former Big 12 team, Oklahoma, we have seen this team show up and not want to play. And Navy very much wants to play this game and wants to win this game. Yeah.
You do get some big Service Academy blowouts sometimes in these.
Yes.
Like, remember Houston Army?
Yes. That was a quitting ass performance by the Cougs.
Also, if we're just gonna throw
Baylor
up
Air Force.
Yep.
Air Force Baylor is always, because it was cold too. That was one where I was like, oh, Baylor does not want to be there at all. I will say that throw the Kyle McCord, potential stat explosion, as they'll be going up against a Washington State team that is already like not a plus value defense in my eyes, and you've got more players lost to the portal right there. Texas Tech, Arkansas, how about this one? 2 coaches who've never lost a bowl game. Sam Pittman, Joey McGuire, both 2-0 in bowl games. Someone's got to lose.
Loser leaves town match.
And then, Boston College, Nebraska, Bill O'Brien versus Matt Rule, game management, clock management, team management. What could go wrong? I mean, there's a lot that we can be able to dig into over the next couple of days, and we're fired up for it. We will be back on Monday for our college football playoff quarterfinal locks, as well as more to be able to get you set for the New Year's holiday. A look at some of those New Year's Eve games, some of those New Year's Day games, and so much more. We hope you enjoy the football this weekend, and you can follow him on Twitter at Tom Fornelli. You can follow him at Bud Elliott 3. You can follow me at Chip _Patterson. Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you.